Welcome back! Today we're diving straight into an explainer of one of the most profound, devastating, and intellectually rigorous arguments about human suffering ever recorded. We're looking at a 2,000-year-old philosophical lament from the ancient Indian epic, the Mahabharata. Specifically, we're unpacking the words of Draupadi. She's just been robbed of absolutely everything, and in the depths of her grief, she constructs this dialectical dilemma about the nature of the universe that is honestly just as shattering today as it was millennia ago.
So if doing good actually protects you, why do the most virtuous people suffer the absolute worst tragedies? That right there is the core existential question driving our entire exploration today. I mean, we've all heard the phrase, what goes around comes around, right? It's this comforting idea that being a good person acts as a sort of cosmic shield against disaster. But what happens when you look out at the real world and see that formula completely inverted? Draupadi is staring this exact paradox right in the face, and she refuses to look away. We're going to skip any formal agenda today to keep the dramatic tension high because the argument she builds is just a relentless step-by-step deconstruction of divine justice.
Part 1. The Paradox of Perfect Virtue.
Let's set the baseline here with the man Draupadi is speaking to, her husband, King Yudhishthira. Now, he wasn't just a decent guy. He was literally the gold standard of morality. Draupadi points out that he did absolutely everything right according to the cosmic rules. He valued virtue over his own life and his own kingdom. He flawlessly executed his religious duties. He fed spiritual ascetics, literally serving them from plates of gold. And he performed the absolute grandest sacrifices of the ancient world, like the Ashwamedha and Rajasuya, which required immense wealth and dedication. The takeaway here is that Yudhishthira didn't slip up. His spiritual bank account was completely 100% maxed out.
And Draupadi hits us with this profound realization that shatters the whole idea of virtue as a shield. She says, I have heard that the king protecteth virtue, and virtue, protected by him, protecteth him in return. I see, however, that virtue protecteth thee not. It's a massive glitch in the system. The contract was supposed to be, do good, get good. Yudhishthira held up his end of the bargain perfectly, but the universe completely defaulted.
Which brings us to the million-dollar henge question. How, O king, could thy mind be attracted to the vice of gambling? If Yudhishthira was so perfect, so disciplined and truthful, how on earth did he end up sitting at a dice game that ruined his entire life? This question pulls us out of his flawless past and drops us right into the absolute catastrophe of his present.
Act 2. A catastrophic fall from grace.
Think about the absolute whiplash here. We're moving from the ultimate good guy to ground zero ruin. On one side, we just established his former glory, eating from solid gold plates, hosting the ultimate royal sacrifices, peak prosperity. But on the other side, because of one disastrous dice game, Yudhishthira is suddenly living out in a solitary forest haunted by robbers, completely stripped of his kingdom. You can deeply feel the contrast. He plummeted from the absolute highest peak of human society down to the lowest, most dangerous depths. And the sheer totality of what he lost is just staggering. Draupadi lays it out. He staked and lost his kingdom, his wealth, his weapons, his brothers, and even herself. The whole shebang, wiped out in one perverse moment of bad judgment at the dice table. A lifetime of pious accumulation gone in a flash. This total destruction forces Draupadi to ask, well, if Yudhishthira's perfect virtue didn't protect him, and his choice to gamble was so wildly out of character, who's actually in control here?
Which leads us to Part 3. The Illusion of Free Will.
Now we're getting into the metaphysical fallout. If virtue didn't cause his current state, who or what is pulling the strings? Draupadi kicks off this rapid-fire sequence of metaphors to really hammer home this feeling of complete human helplessness. She says, O hero amongst men, as a wooden doll is made to move its limbs by the wire puller, so are creatures made to work by the Lord of all. It's incredibly evocative. She's arguing that Yudhishthira didn't actually choose to gamble. He, and frankly all of humanity, are just wooden dolls being manipulated by a cosmic wire puller. And she doesn't stop there. She keeps the momentum going with another metaphor. Like a bird tied with a string, every creature is dependent on God. I mean, think about that. A bird might think it's flying freely, feeling the wind, making its own choices. But the second it hits the end of that string, reality sets in. It builds perfectly on that restriction of freedom. We might feel independent, but we are absolutely tethered.
To really drive it home, we get these visceral images, like a pearl on its string or a bull held fast by the cord passing through its nose. Just visualize a massive bull being led by the nose. It has immense, terrifying power, just like a king, but it is entirely subjugated by whoever happens to hold that tiny cord. By presenting these images, the text leaves us questioning our own autonomy.
because if we're all just pearls on a string, what exactly does that say about the one holding it? Act 4. God as the master puppeteer. We're shifting our focus upwards now to the entity actually holding those strings, looking at Draupadi's concept of the great Ordainer. The text presents this chilling definition of divine illusion. It describes a power spread by God that deliberately confounds creatures, causing them to slay their own fellows. Draupadi compares human conflict to someone just casually breaking a piece of inert wood with another piece of wood, or smashing stones together. In this view, we aren't tragic heroes making grand, meaningful mistakes. Human beings are merely senseless objects being smashed together by a higher power for its own hidden purposes.
And honestly, the imagery only gets darker from here. The Supreme Lord sporteth with his creatures, creating and destroying them like a child with a toy of soft earth. This completely demystifies divine will. The cosmos isn't governed by some grand, perfectly just and comprehensible moral arc. According to this lament, it resembles the chaotic, completely arbitrary play of a child molding and then instantly crushing a clay toy. It is a terrifyingly indifferent view of the universe.
Bringing us to the final act, the problem of divine justice. So we've arrived at the climax of our argument. Draupadi takes all this evidence and levels a searing, brutally logical indictment against the fairness of this divine puppeteer. She lays out the empirical data, and it points to a wildly broken cosmic justice system. On one side, she looks around and sees superior, well-behaved, modest people, like her husband, being relentlessly persecuted. On the flip side, she sees Suyodhana, the very man who cheated them, a crooked guy who actively injures virtue, just bathing in immense prosperity. The data just doesn't support the idea of a fair God. We've all felt that universal frustration of seeing the wicked succeed while good people suffer, and Draupadi is giving that feeling a razor-sharp philosophical voice.
And then she drops this monumentally bold accusation. Draupadi looks at the suffering of the good and the wild success of the wicked, and says of God, "He seemeth to bear himself towards them in anger, like a vicious person." Let the absolute gravity of that sink in. The text is literally accusing the creator of acting violently and viciously, rather than behaving as a loving parent protecting their children.
To close it all out, Draupadi sets up this inescapable logic trap. It's brilliant. She offers two premises. First, if God truly causes all acts, if we are literally just wooden dolls on strings, then the inevitable conclusion is that God himself is stained with the sin of every wicked act committed by the bad guys. God becomes the author of sin. But okay, consider the alternative. If acts are independent, if God isn't pulling the strings, and karma doesn't actually protect the virtuous, well then the conclusion is that pure might, raw, brutal power, is the true cause of outcomes in the world, not virtue. Which leaves us staring down this incredibly provocative final question. If virtue offers no protection, does only might matter? Draupadi essentially forces us into a corner, where we have to choose between an unjust God who authors evil, or a cold, indifferent universe ruled only by brutal force, where the strong simply eat the weak. It's a terrifying dilemma, meticulously constructed through raw observation and cold logic. I'm going to leave you to independently wrestle with the implications of that one. Thanks for focusing in with me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.